All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to introduce the candidates. Mrs. Sarah Grace, and Mr. Jay Edwards. A thank you to the Governmental Affairs Commissioner, Nick Felt, and to the moderator, Dr. Bernier. At this time, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And to begin the evening, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I just want to make everyone aware there's refreshments in the back. And if you haven't registered to vote, there's voter registration cards up here.
Yep. Okay. Good evening, and thank you for all of you for joining us tonight. We're excited to gather on this evening of National Voter Registration Day for this town hall style debate. The Ohio University Student Senate is proud to host this forum for the 94th District House Representative candidates, Ms. Sarah Grace and Mr. Jay Edwards. I'm the moderator, Dr. Delisa Bernier of Ohio University, and I'm a professor of political science, and I want to thank the Ohio University Student Senate for inviting me to be the moderator. Ohio University seeks to provide opportunities for learning and the free exchange of ideas, including events such as this one. In keeping with this goal, audience members are able to join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #TownHallOU. In the interest of ensuring an orderly event, audience members are asked to refrain from engaging in excessive cheering or other conduct that could disrupt the event. Anyone engaging in disruptive behavior will be subject to removal. Tonight's forum will take place in several parts. We have opening statements, 2 rounds of questions, and closing statements. The first round features questions that were developed by a committee comprised of members from both the Ohio University College Republicans and the College Democrats. Please join me in thanking the respective presidents of these organizations, David Parkhill and Samantha Miller, for their insistence in developing these questions. The questions span the following 5 specific topics: the economy, healthcare, education, environment, and our community. Candidates will alternate between who answers each question first, and each answer will be 2 minutes long. Both candidates will have an opportunity to respond to each question. The second round will feature questions pre-screened by the same committee, contributed by audience members via an anonymous Twitter poll. Again, there will be 2 minutes for each candidate's response. The candidates and I conducted a coin toss to determine who will deliver their opening statement first. And since Mr. Edwards won the coin toss, he will give his opening statement first, and he has 2 minutes beginning now.
My name is Jay Edwards, and I'm very fortunate to have been born right here in southeastern Ohio in Nelsonville to a family of hardworking small business owners. I went to Nelsonville York City schools my entire life, where I ultimately received a football scholarship to come here to Ohio University, where I would eventually get my degree in mathematics from Ohio University. Although Nelsonville, many of you probably know where that's at, traveled through it on your way here, only 20 minutes down the road, it was a very new experience coming here to Ohio University. A lot of people in Appalachia, a lot of students in high school in Appalachia, we do not get to meet people from various backgrounds from within our primary schools. Being a part of a team of students with these diverse backgrounds, coming together as one to accomplish a goal, is something that I'm very proud to take a part of on the football field. I know many of the students in here today take part in that same thing within their local organizations and clubs. I want to take the same approach in Columbus to represent Appalachia. This area is very unique, is and always will be home to me and hold a special place in my heart. And there are issues here in this area that are shared with other parts of the state. We need to do away with the partisan bickering taking place at the state level and make a change for one of the poorest districts in the state of Ohio. That's what I plan on doing if elected on November the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grace, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here. Thank you to the College Democrats and College Republicans for all the work you've done in getting questions ready for this evening. Thank you to Student Senate for organizing this event. And thank you, Dr. Bernier, for agreeing to be a moderator. And thank you all for coming. I'm so thrilled when I see crowds of people of all ages, backgrounds, wanting to be involved in the democratic process. And it's an exciting time, an exciting thing to be a part of. And I'm really delighted to be here and to see you all here. For anyone who doesn't already know me, my name is Sarah Grace, and I'm running for the 94th House seat. I have several reasons for running. Am I close enough to the mic? Okay. Thank you. I'm running because I'm a parent of 4 kids, and as I've watched them grow up, and I've watched what's happened in their education in our public school system, I felt compelled to be more involved, to make a statement, to make some changes. Every child growing up in America deserves access to quality public education, and our schools absolutely need to be fully and fairly funded, and we're committed to fighting for that for Appalachia. I'm running because I'm a cancer survivor, and I experienced firsthand what it's like to be denied health insurance and what it's like to face losing my job and my housing because of a medical condition. And I want to work to ensure that no one living here faces those struggles. We need access to health care for everyone. It needs to be quality health care that is affordable, reliable, and accessible. I want to be the state representative for the 94th district because I've lived here with my husband for nearly 20 years and with my kids growing up here. And they've had many friends, and we've had many friends who've had to leave and move away because they needed to find a job. And I want to be a part of creating opportunities so that more families can stay in this area that I love.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to lead off with our first round of questions, and we're beginning with the economy. So the first category is the economy, and Ms. Grace will begin. And here's the question. According to February's Ohio Poverty Report, Athens County had a poverty rate of 31.6%, nearly double the statewide rate of 15.9%. How do you plan to address this?
Well, I know that these reports for Athens County specifically can be skewed because of the student population. We have a large population of students, which is a wonderful thing, and it really is an important vital part of our community. But when those students are counted as residents of the county, I remember when I was a student and a grad student, I didn't make very much money. So that's one thing that we have to consider when looking at those numbers, and be sure that we're comparing apples to apples, so to speak, when we're looking at poverty rates. But I think that from the state's perspective, we absolutely need to be working to encourage innovative business ideas, and I think that's a fantastic opportunity for public and private partnerships in Athens, and we've had many successful ones already within our community. It creates a sustainable, diversified economy, and that's something that I think is a wonderful aspect of this community, and I would love to see that being utilized and expanded in other parts of the district that don't have the same opportunities locally.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Edwards, you have 2 minutes to respond about your plan to address Athens County poverty rate.
Yeah, I think the poverty rate here in Athens County is the #1 issue, and good paying jobs is the #1 issue our area faces. If you look amongst this district that we're running in, we really would represent 4 counties partial and two counties really partial in Athens County, all of Meigs County, part of Benton County, and part of Washington counties. If you look at the United States unemployment rate, we're running majorly, which is running about 5, according to reports from August, which is running about 5 even. We're way above that in all of these counties. In Meigs County, we're about 7.6, which is way above that rate. When we look at our area, it's such a unique area and such a wide range of options for jobs in this area. One of the things that I think we have to take advantage of right now is our cheap and abundance of natural gas in the Marcellus Shale and Utica Shale. You can buy natural gas cheaper in Appalachia than you can anywhere in the world right now. And they're projecting within the next 5 years of 40% of the United States natural gas coming from this area. We have to make sure it's done safely. We have to make sure it's regulated. But we need to take advantage of this, and we can get high energy using companies to invest here and create both research and development firms through Ohio University. They can utilize Ohio University for research and development. They want to invest here because of OU, as well as we have a lot of people, blue collar workers that want to get jobs here locally that can take advantage of this. I think that we have to take advantage of what we were given and what we have right now in our cheap energy.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question, how do you stand on right to work legislation? And Mr. Edwards will begin.
So I have been very public about this. Again, y'all talk about a lot of things from a nonpartisanship standpoint or a bipartisanship standpoint, as I've just never looked at something from a Republican-Democrat type of point of view. I am endorsed by a union affiliation from the International Union of Operating Engineers, and I see a need for unions. I definitely see a major need for unions. Recently, I went down and toured a Kraton, which is a polymer company down in Belpre, Ohio. It's in Washington County, and they're a non-union company. They have more union guys that are working on a daily basis, building ramps, doing things. And when talking to their plant manager, a big reason why is because for this company to go out and hire a workforce that is dependable, that can do the work, that's experienced, can pass a drug test, this would take time. Time is money. These guys have an advantage of going out and hiring people right out of the union that they know can do these things, they know their experience, they know the type of work that they're going to do. And I think it's very important that we keep things that way and we fight against right to work legislation here in the state of Ohio.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Grace, please share with us your stance on right to work legislation.
So-called right to work legislation is wrong. It's wrong for workers. It's wrong for the state of Ohio. And I am firmly opposed to any form of right to work legislation. I'm proud to say that I've been endorsed by over a dozen organized labor unions, and teachers unions, the laborers, and plumbers and pipe fitters, because they believe in my strong stance for safety and safety and fair wages and benefits for all workers. And when unions are strong, everyone, all workers in the state benefit. We have higher wages, safer workplaces, and better working conditions for all workers. So I'm absolutely committed to fighting any right to work legislation.
Okay, thank you. The final question in this category will go to Ms. Grace first. The 94th District has seen the rise of local food programs such as the 30-mile meal and multiple farmers markets. With over 700 local farms, each averaging over returns of over $13,000, how would you support the growth of this local food economy?
This is one of the most exciting things in our region, the local food and beverage economy. We have so many small businesses that have become incredibly successful. I recently toured Jackie O's and learned that Jackie O's beer is is sold in over 3,200 locations in Ohio. It's something that started right here in Athens, a small locally owned business, and it's grown, now served KSU in Ohio State, and that's a new development for them. It was very exciting. I believe that small farms, locally owned businesses, and restaurants are key to developing a strong, diversified economy here. We can bring them together, tie in tourism events with arts events. We have several wineries. We could do winery tours and brewery tours and bring people from other places in the state to enjoy the wonderful resources we have by making sure that we are able to team up the local businesses with tourism and with other economic development organizations like Buckeye Hills Regional Development. Be sure that they have the financing that they need and the resources in order to market and distribute their product. Snowville Creamery is wonderful, and a major hurdle that they face is distribution throughout the state. And I want to be sure to do anything that I could do as a representative to facilitate broadening the distribution by decreasing regulation and increasing financial support to those local industries that are sustainable, they're wonderful for our community, our economy, and the environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, please share your plans to support the growth of our local food economy.
Absolutely. I think our local farm economy is something special here in Athens. If none of you have been over to the farmers market at the Athens Mall on East State Street or the market on East State Street, it's something to definitely check out. It's a great place to get homegrown fruits, vegetables, cheeses, whatever they want. I see my aunt's in the crowd. She's always talking about the farmers market and going there to getting her things at the farmers market. Something that I think could represent all farmers is farming is the #1 industry in the state of Ohio. I'm not sure if many people know that. It's something we've capitalized on this area. It's small farming and taking advantage of the small farming. And Ms. Grace talked about Jackios. Jackios is a great example of taking advantage of it. I see our Athens Mayor Steve Patterson here in the back of the room. He's a small farmer. These farms are small businesses, and they are what make America great. They're what makes Southeastern Ohio great. Similar to my family and small businesses, I'm very familiar with these types of backgrounds. I have been given the endorsement as well by the Farm Bureau and considered a friend of agriculture. And I really feel like the point of that and the reason I got that endorsement was because of my stance on the current agricultural usage valuation tax, or the CAUV tax, that goes along with farming. This is something that has greatly affected farmers both in this area and across the state. It's something that it's a formula to determine property taxes within the state of Ohio, and it's getting off into not getting about the aggregates and the crops and the certain things taking place on the farm, as opposed it's taking into soil samples into consideration. We have to get back to a formula that allows this property tax, the CAUV tax, to not increase as much as it's because it's leaving farmers without any idea of what their properties are going to be, what their property taxes are going to be from year to year.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving to our next category of questions with a focus on health care. Ms.
Increasing year.
First on this, how do you feel about the Affordable Care Act?
I think the Affordable Care Act, obviously it's a federal thing, federal program, but I think that it had a great impact on Ohio, specifically with the Medicaid expansion. There's been a lot of bills passed around the Affordable Care Act and allowing the expansion of Medicaid here in Ohio. Medicaid expansion is something that's very unique to Southeastern Ohio. I'm sure most of you have heard that Southeastern Ohio has a major drug problem within our region. Medicaid expansion has allowed these folks to seek treatment that they normally would not have gotten. Again, this is another bipartisan effort as our governor has taken this on, and it's gotten bipartisan support across the state. It also helps people get healthy so that they can find work. Maybe people didn't have insurance, they weren't healthy, they couldn't work. It allows these people to get healthy and have the ability to seek help and potentially get them back into a job. I have many friends from Nelsonville and Southeastern Ohio that were working that couldn't take pay raises, that couldn't take promotions within their jobs because they were going to lose their Medicaid benefits that they were getting. This Medicaid expansion has allowed that to decrease and allowed them to make more money while keeping them in a job and allowing them to get more money in their paycheck every week. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Grace, can share your reaction to Affordable Care, please?
Susan, thank you. I think that the Affordable Care Act is an important step for our country, just recognizing that we should be providing reliable and affordable health care to all of our citizens. And I agree with Mr. Edwards that the Medicaid expansion has been a very valuable thing for residents within Southeast Ohio, and it has provided improved access to treatment. It's not enough yet. We need to keep doing more. We need to expand it, keep working for everyone to have complete coverage.
Okay. Now, our next question actually gets at the Medicaid expansion. Okay, so however you want to add, or so let me ask the question of you first, Ms. Grace. Please share what are your opinions on the expansion of Medicaid under Governor Kasich? If you want to add to what you've already said, or
Sure. One of the things that I've learned in meeting with some healthcare professionals in the area is that it was surprising to me was that access to treatment for addiction is easier and is more readily available in Meigs County than it is in Washington County. And that is because Washington County has more working poor. They are working at a job that causes them to no longer qualify for Medicaid even under the expansion, but they don't have good health insurance. They have a health insurance program that has deductibles that are too high, or that doesn't cover counseling or addiction services. And whereas there are more residents in Meigs County because it has a higher poverty rate that are eligible under the Medicaid expansion. So I believe there's a gap there that we need to bridge that gap so that more people are covered either by full health insurance or under the Medicaid expansion.
okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Edwards, you have 2 minutes to react also to the recent Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, so I'll talk about, since I already talked about Medicaid expansion, I'll talk about some current bills that have been passed. The current bill, House Bill 64, has been passed, which really is committed to ensuring Ohio's Medicaid program is able to provide the best quality of care for Ohioans while controlling costs. Something that bill also did, which is kind of unique, it allowed transparency within the healthcare world that could allow Medicaid, people on Medicaid to see their costs maybe before treatment, going in to see a doctor and see their costs before treatment. Another thing that's greatly impacting this area, and it's kind of off topic, but it is around Medicaid, is the sales tax on Medicaid is something that's getting ready to go away in Ohio. The Supreme Court has ruled we have pinpointed Medicaid and only tax Medicaid. It's gone to local governments and counties, and the Supreme Court has ruled that that is not legal, as we're not taxing all managed markets, all insurance. There's been talk that Ohio is going to go to a California model where the tax is assessed to all managed care, and then a rebate comes in for private payers, essentially being very similar. But this tax has given our small government, this tax has given our small government in Appalachia a lot of money. It's something that definitely needs to be fought for, and there needs to be short-term and long-term solutions to this problem. What seems like a little money to the state is a lot of money for areas like Meigs County, Athens County, Benton County, and Washington County. So we need to search for solutions and make sure that this is covered by the state and make sure that these counties are getting their fair share and not completely cut off from this money. And it's something that I definitely want to fight for. It's something I've been keeping my eye on.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question, and it'll begin with Mr. Edwards. What steps will you take to ensure that women are guaranteed reproductive health care in the 94th District?
This is something that is very passionate. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I think it's majorly an issue going around the state, the country, and southeastern Ohio. I think that some of the steps have been done for healthcare and access to healthcare here recently, with giving some money to our federally qualified healthcare centers, which we have a lot more of here in the state of Ohio, and we have 10 to 12 right here in southeastern Ohio. I think these are steps that we have taken to make sure that we have affordable health care and we have access to reliable health care. The argument always usually comes up for women's reproductive rights and certain things, and one thing we have to realize is we're representing all the people. Sometimes we have to separate ourselves from our beliefs and realize that we're representing a constituent base. There's some people that their number one most passionate issue is circled around reproductive rights and pro-life, and other people are pro-choice and these sorts of things. I think that we have to realize that there's arguments on both sides of the aisle, and when you're representing an area, you're representing constituents that feel very harshly about one way or the other, and you have to separate yourself. One thing that typically gets lost in that argument is usually a young female that it gets left maybe and is searching for health care and doesn't have a way out, can't find a job. I think that these are other areas, in accessing jobs for all people and having access to jobs, which could potentially provide health care or financial stability, is another way that we could fight to make sure women's reproductive rights were being looked into and taken care of officially.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Grace, what steps will you take to ensure that women are guaranteed reproductive health care in the 94th District?
All women need access to reliable, confidential, reproductive health care. It should not be questioned. It is not a decision for legislators in Columbus or Washington, D.C. to make. Women's right to choose is a woman's choice, and it needs to be made in consultation with her physician. I will therefore support funding for Planned Parenthood because it has been competing for the funding, and it is shown to be an efficient, reliable. Planned Parenthood is one of the most trusted organizations in the country because it is a known name, and women and men can go there for safe, reliable, affordable health care. And I firmly believe that this is something that we need to protect and defend in our country. Courts have ruled on this issue many years ago. I did not think that this would be an issue that I would need to fight for, but I'm a woman who has experienced a miscarriage of a pregnancy that I really wanted. I've experienced medically necessary surgical removal, sorry, this is an emotional topic for me, of a non-viable pregnancy. And I've also had the unbelievable joy of experiencing 4 healthy term pregnancies. I have 4 wonderful children. Every decision that I made, I needed choice and freedom to make that decision with my doctor. And fortunately, I have a very supportive husband, and so I included him in that consultation and in that decision. Those need to be a woman's decision, and I will fight to protect a woman's right to choose what is best for her family and for her own life.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're moving to our next category, and that's education. Okay, we're moving to our next category, and that's education. And this round of questioning begins with Ms. Grace. Recent statewide report cards from the Ohio Department of Education show that K-12 schools in Athens County are not fully preparing their students for life after high school. Multiple schools rank as D or an F in preparing students for jobs or college in county schools. How will you address this, and do you believe that this may be a result of the Common Core?
Personally, I don't put much weight in the report cards. These report cards are based on scores from testing, and we're over-testing our students, and the testing, we don't even know what the test results mean because the state has switched which company, which test they're going to use 3 times in 3 years. How can we at all begin to compare 1 year's results or scores to another year when it's 3 different testing methods, 3 different measurements, And it is absolutely unfair to our teachers and to our school districts to be putting them through this. And it's not providing reliable, verifiable information. The tests are not verified. We need a study that is available to the public to say, what exactly are these tests that are being given to our children? What are they measuring? What do the results actually mean? So one of my very few acts of civil disobedience was a few years ago when my older children were in school and the PARCC test was being administered. I opted them out of the test because I do not believe that that is a fair way to measure our children, to measure our teachers, or our school districts. It is only being done because it is a money-making venture for testing companies. And I believe that Common Core is a wonderful idea and foundation, having common standards that are adopted across the nation of what is expected for kids as they are learning at different levels. So we know teachers can plan their curriculums and students can go from school to school, but the testing has gotten out of hand and it's not actually helping students, teachers, or districts.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, your turn.
Yes, I think this is another issue that, again, I think is a very bipartisan issue. Again, it's something that we all agree that this is a problem, and we need to fight towards fixing a solution to this problem. I went to Nelsonville, York. I attended public schools here in southeastern Ohio my entire life until I came to college. I have many teachers in my family, so I hear about Common Core and different issues associated from every which way. But I think the big thing is we have to realize that standards are needed. But we need more local control of our schools so teachers can spend more time teaching and students can spend more time learning. The fact is that Common Core comes from the federal government. In 2009, Common Core was adopted by $400 million given, $400 million federal dollars given to the state of Ohio under Ted Strickland, and it hasn't really gotten much better since then. We need more local control of our schools. We need to end the federal government's mandates on student testing and get back to testing in schools and curriculums being centered and made around the students, teachers, and the organizations around the local schools. Another thing that we deal with here in southeastern Ohio is poverty. We just talked about it a little bit ago. Research shows that it costs more money to educate kids that live within poverty. And this is something that the state needs to take into account when they're determining funding, when they're determining money coming to this area. We need to realize that it costs more money to educate some of these kids coming from poverty. Many of these teachers in this area, people don't realize, act as maybe the most parental figure that some of these kids will ever have. They're dealing with kids, they're dealing with their home lives, they're dealing with things that a lot of kids don't have in other areas that I think the students with the resources they've been given or the teachers with the resources they've been given have done a phenomenal job here in Southeast Ohio.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next question goes to charter schools, and it begins with you, Mr. Edwards. Where do you stand on charter schools?
Charter schools, first and foremost, charter schools have been a hot topic in the news lately, and again, it's another thing that is not partisan. It has bipartisan support that to be against charter schools, and I think that charter schools are an issue. I think it's a great option. I think there's some kids that need an alternative form of education. However, the funding model for charter schools is not on par. They are taking out of the public schools' pocket to fund these charter schools. At the same time, they're not being held to the same standards. Charter schools deserve to be held to the same standards. There's actually been a recent example of this as far as just here within the last couple of days of charter schools fudging their numbers on attendance records and potentially having to give millions, upwards of $60 million back to the state. But the good news is that there is a comprehensive charter school reform that's being worked on, and it's actually been passed. And it's something that, again, has gotten bipartisan support, and it's something that we need to continually look into. ECOT, which is the online schooling, is the biggest charter school we have in this district that we compete with. And we're seeing things like Athens High School struggling with funding right now. One of the biggest issues they have with funding is the way that charter schools are funded. Again, they are taking out of the pockets of our public schools. And it's something that definitely needs looked into and definitely needs fixed for our area.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Grace, what do you feel about charter schools?
In Ohio, charter schools are public schools. They are publicly funded. Charter schools are funded with our tax dollars. That makes them public schools. However, they are not held to the same standards at all. They are not held to the same standards of ethics in terms of who they hire, who their contracts are given to. There are stories of friends of the backers of a charter school being the company that provides the cafeteria service and none of the children attending that charter school having the option of packing their lunch. Everyone has to buy the school lunch that's provided by the friends of the backers of the school. So we need clear guidelines for ethics, for accountability, for standards. And this is absolutely especially true when it comes to online charter schools. Our region of the state, the 94th district, does not have any brick and mortar charter schools. There are only online charter schools in this section of the state. And the House and the Senate have recently passed legislation to start the process of increasing accountability of charter schools. However, I would disagree with my opponent that this is a bipartisan effort because the Republicans offered at least 4 different amendments to exempt the e-schools from the oversight and from the accountability. And the e-schools are perhaps where we absolutely need it the most because they are saying that they don't have to even guarantee that their students are logging in and participating, but they are only required to offer the education. Can you imagine if Athens Middle School or high school said, well, we're open, the education's available, kids can come or not, we're not going to take attendance. But we still need your tax dollars. It's not acceptable for our local public schools, it's not acceptable for online charter schools, and we absolutely need more accountability.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move to higher education. And the questions will begin with Ms. Grace. How might you plan to combat student debt within the state?
I think that the state of Ohio has an obligation to responsibly cap tuition levels, and along with that, to guarantee a percentage of the cost of higher education will be provided from the state. Otherwise, our public higher institutions of learning are not going to be able to continue to provide the quality of education that we expect from it. I think a 60% number is a good place to start, that the state should be funding 60% of the cost of higher education, and then along with that, like I said, a responsible cap on tuition. I believe that all fees associated with the cost of attending college, tuition, room and board, books, lab fees, clicker fees, all of these fees need to be exempt to provide tax credits when we're paying for those fees, whether it's the parents of students or the students themselves. And I think that also providing more tax relief and setting up a structure by which a student loan repayment is a set percentage of the graduate income makes sense. And this has to be federal student loans, of course, and that needs to be addressed from the federal level, but from the state level, we can work on addressing the initial costs.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edward, your responses to student debt.
I think student debt is something that is a major issue across all colleges across the country, and it's only rising. One thing I'd like to do in the state of Ohio is I began looking at, and you study state government and you look at different committees. I'd like to get assigned to the Finance and Appropriations Committee, and more specifically the Subcommittee on Higher Education, to fight this exact issue. We also need to make sure that we increase funding for need-based financial aid, especially in this area. Again, we've talked about the poverty-stricken area and different areas in southeastern Ohio that need more help. Something else that I like to talk about is as tuition costs need to look at, we also need to make sure that our students are getting their money's worth in college, and we need to make sure that college is providing a student with what they're needing to go out into the real world, get a job, these sorts of things, as well as the great college experience. To go back a little bit on what Ms. Grace said on the charter schools and it being a partisanship issue, maybe I'm different, but I've never looked at anything from a partisanship standpoint. I look at something from right and wrong as opposed to right and left. And I think that this is a major issue. You know, when you get to Columbus, you have to get support from both ends of the aisle to get something done. And it's about working with people to get something done. And making something like public education for our youth a partisanship issue is not right to me and something that I don't stand for. I think that it's something that to say that it is a Republican versus Democrat thing, I think is something that's not fair. And it's something that I definitely want to fight for. I definitely want to fight for the student debt and student loans. But I just wanted to say that as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you to both candidates. Our next section is the environment, and I'm beginning with Mr. Edwards. You have 2 minutes to respond. As you know, over the past few years, there have been various proposals to allow hydraulic fracturing or fracking in the area of the Wayne National Forest. How do you feel about these plans?
Fracking on the Wayne National Forest, is that the question? Fracking on the Wayne National Forest is something that I haven't looked into, as it is a national issue. It's the Bureau of Land Management issue, which is a federal program. So I haven't looked into it. But in talking about fracking, I know fracking has caused a lot of chaos here locally, and I get it. I understand. Fracking is something that's been done for nearly 60 years. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, 5 years ago, Ohio produced 10% of the natural gas that we actually use. As of right now, this year, we're producing as much as we use. This is a major big deal. Again, I go back, I said this earlier, another huge deal for this area is we have the cheapest natural gas in the world. And they're projecting 40% of the natural gas produced can come out of the Mid-Ohio Valley over the next 5 years. I know that injection wells is something that's greatly talked about as the negative impact of fracking, and I get it. You know, we have two ways of disposing this fracking waste. We can store it above ground, which is very risky, or we can inject it. We choose to inject it. One thing that I'm not a fan of is companies being able to come here, dump their frack waste on us, and we get no benefit from it whatsoever, and usually tearing up our roads in the process. This is something that I don't support and something that I'm definitely looking into. Definitely want to fight for, actually, not just looking into it. I've looked into it. It's definitely something that I want to fight for. If you look in eastern Ohio around the fracking industry, there's been $33 billion of investments. We have a kid in this room right now that I met here a couple weeks ago. His name's Cole. He wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for the fracking industry. It wasn't for leasing his property rights over in Belmont County and in eastern Ohio, or as he calls it, Beltucky. This is something that can change lives. It can bring jobs to this area, good paying jobs for a lot of citizens that maybe aren't meant to go to college, as well as good college paying jobs in research and development in certain areas. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Grace?
I do not believe that fracking within our national forests meets the criteria of being a compatible use. And that being said, this is a federal issue because it is a national forest. But my personal belief is that hydraulic fracturing within a forest is not compatible with other uses, and that is a requirement for our national forests and parks. To take a few moments just to respond to some of the other issues around fracking. Oil and gas extraction for now is here to stay. I believe that we should be focusing our efforts on encouraging alternative and renewable resources, because we know that fossil fuels are a non-renewable resource. There's a finite amount, and we should not be basing our economy and our jobs on something that will cause a boom and bust within our region. We need to be smarter than that. We need to make better choices and look at what needs to happen down the road, and that is that we start now investing in renewable resources that will take us into the future and protect our jobs, our economy, and the environment for future generations.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next question goes to Ms. Grace first. What is your stance on climate change, and how do you propose to address it?
I believe climate change is absolutely real, and it is absolutely impacted by human activity. We need to put all of our resources, all of brain power and industry and innovation that we can into fighting that trend. And that goes right along with what I was talking about with the renewables. We need to be decreasing our reliance on any sort of fossil fuel, not just foreign versus domestic, but we need to focus on what will move us forward and what will provide long-term protections for the earth, air, and water. And reliance on fossil fuels is not going to get us there. So I believe very strongly that we all need to be working together on this. We're not living in isolated little pockets of the world. We're all connected. And what we do here, just like people do in China or India or France, it impacts the entire global system. And it is one huge ecosystem that supports all of us. And we need to treat it with respect and understand that we do have a finite time to look at and address these problems. So we need to be working together on an international scale to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and curb the trend of climate change.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, your turn. How do you propose we respond to climate change?
Yes, and I agree with a lot of what Ms. Grace said. Whenever I think about climate change, I think of waste. I think about wasted energy and energy that is not utilized. One thing I always like to keep in mind is when it comes to energy, the cleanest and cheapest form of energy we have is energy that we do not use. So I think energy efficiency, peak demand reductions are some of the things that we can do to take advantage of reducing energy, reducing energy, and keep prices low for the consumer. I think it's in the consumer's best interest to engage in energy efficiency measures. I think we can utilize utility companies for letting their customer base be aware of things like lighting within their homes, insulation within their homes. Most companies take these measures because they are in it to make a profit. They are in it to make money. We need to incentivize them to get this to their customers and allow them to share in the cost saving and energy saving markets. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving to our final segment of round one, and our final segment focuses on our community. And Mr. Edwards, you get to answer first. How do you plan to combat the drug problems at both the local and state levels?
Yeah, so the drug problem is a major issue. One of the biggest issues facing this area, and it's only on the rise. I think it's very good to understand why the heroin epidemic is happening here, and why so many people are. We're seeing the heroin on the rise here, and fentanyl now, which is a deadly combination with the heroin. We need to find ways, and if you put yourselves in the seat of our local law enforcement, it's a double-edged sword. We need more areas of rehabilitation for drug abusers, for addiction, while also finding a way to punish people that are bringing it, injecting it for a profit into our area. So our treatment facilities definitely need more funding. On top of that, I've spent a lot of time with our 317 board here locally and talked with them about other areas that face this issue. Another thing is we need to implement some type of program when they're coming out of rehabilitation. Right now, they get done with rehab. We send them right back out into the real world, maybe hanging around the same people and living the same life that got them involved with drugs in the first place. I think we need to change this. I think with the abundance and bringing jobs to this area, it's somewhere that we can maybe incentivize companies for hiring out of the drug rehabilitation centers for first-time drug abusers. These are all ways that I think we could take advantage of, and I think that we are seeing more counseling, but they definitely need more funding, and it's definitely something that it's a double-edged sword for our local law enforcement to fight this issue, determine who needs punished, put in jail, sentenced for these, and convicted for these crimes, and who needs help, because addiction is a disease, and we need help in these areas. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Grace, please share your response to the local and statewide drug crisis.
In 2015, Ohio ranked second in the nation for overdose deaths. Because we averaged 8 deaths per day due to overdoses in the state. It is absolutely a crisis. We need our governor to call it what it is and declare it a public health emergency so that emergency funds can be dispersed to local communities to really start addressing this problem. I've spent a lot of time talking with the Director of Health Recovery Services and talking to individual counselors who work directly in this field, as well as talking with law enforcement officers. I've heard absolutely heartbreaking stories. Stories of law enforcement who rescue someone. They administer Narcan, a rescue drug, to save someone from an overdose, only to have that person overdose again and die 2 days later. We need a system to help these people right then. We need Narcan is necessary. We need to know how to get them directly into some of the help and treatment that they need. And we're currently within Health Recovery Services. I asked recently if someone called and wanted into their treatment program, which is a medicated assisted treatment, if they called in September, they would probably get an appointment in January. That is absolutely unacceptable. We need access. The day someone needs treatment and wants to seek treatment, that treatment needs to be available immediately. We also need creative solutions. How can we help bring the resources that are needed? Incarceration is not the answer for addiction. I firmly believe that medicated assisted treatment is what will work the best of the options that we know, and that requires therapy and counseling to address the underlying issues and not just the addiction.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, who do you, and I'm beginning with Ms. Grace, who do you endorse for the presidency?
I enthusiastically endorse Hillary Clinton.
And Mr. Edwards, who do you endorse for
I'm going
president?
to talk, I'm going to take my
All right.
not the total 2 minutes, but I haven't came out and endorsed anyone for the presidency so far. But one thing I've talked about, again, I've followed the race as much as I typically would in a presidential year, mostly because I've been focused on state issues and going out and talking to people and constituents and finding ways and solutions to help out our area. One thing I'd like to point out is this year in the primary here in Athens County, the 2 winners of the primary on the Democratic and Republican ticket were Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Didn't follow the rest of the state. Hillary won the state and John Kasich won the state. I think what we're seeing and what we're seeing from Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders and going completely opposite ends of the spectrum is people are frustrated here. People are upset. They feel like the government isn't working for them. They feel like their voices are not being heard. This is the biggest reason that I've decided to run for state representative. We need someone to listen to us, to represent these people, to go to Columbus and find ways to get things done. And that's the biggest reason why I'm running, and I think we're seeing an outcry in that across our nation, not just in southeastern Ohio, especially right here in Athens County with who won the primary.
Okay, this is our final question in this category, and then after this, we'll take a 5-minute break. What was the one value that was instilled in you as a Bobcat that has inspired you to go to the State House in Columbus, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I talked about this in my opening speech. Something that I think I talked about coming in here as a football player from small town Nelsonville and meeting people from all walks of life and us coming together as one to fight for trying to win a football game or coming together as a group on campus and trying to get a good grade on a project. From small town Nelsonville to playing football in the Horseshoe against Ohio State and running out on the field with 106,000 people, with people you may have known for only months working together to win a football game. It kind of brings me back to the point of what I would do as a state legislator. We need to work with people from across the state. There are people that are affected by the same things affecting us in specific categories in different areas of the state, and there's actual opportunity to get something done here in southeastern Ohio. But it takes bipartisan support. It takes reaching out to legislators because regardless of how hard you fight, you have to get the votes in Columbus to get anything done. And we need to reach out. We need to create an Appalachian caucus. We have an Appalachian caucus right now, but it's very weak. They don't meet very often. We need to change that. We need to make sure we meet regularly. We suffer a lot from the same issues. We need to get together as a team and take on Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, these areas that have a lot of people and a lot of money fighting for them that prohibit us from getting a lot of things done. I think if we fought together as a team, we can get things done. And we also have to reach across the state to different areas that share interests and problems that we have and fight with these people.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Grice, one value that was instilled in you as a Bobcat that has inspired you to go on to the State House in Columbus.
The power and the value of education. Education, I think, is the most vital tool that we can provide to our young people, to adults, to continue to make this region and the world a better place. And I had the privilege as a young person growing up. I lived both in a small village in Vermont, and I lived in a really tiny town in Missouri. And something funny about Missouri is all their incorporated towns and villages, the population of the town up on the sign. When you enter the town, it has the population. The town I lived in had 434 people. It was very small. The county high school had approximately 300 students in the entire high school. So I had some diverse experiences before coming to Ohio University. But then I met people who were from Athens County, from Meigs County, like my husband, and I experienced the wonderful joy of finding out that we had different backgrounds, but we had so much in common. And through education, both learning myself and then also working as a graduate assistant teaching, and during my undergrad, I had a wonderful experience of teaching classes to local elementary school students that would actually come to the basement of my dorm, and we would do chemistry classes once a week with elementary school kids, and it was so wonderful just to see their enthusiasm and their excitement to come to the college campus and experience something new and different and be exposed to education. So education is my motivation for running, and I thoroughly enjoyed my educational experience at Ohio University, and that was certainly part of what has formed me into who I am today.
Okay, thank you both very much. We're finished with our first round, and we'll take a 5-minute or so break. Okay, so
you read my mind. I was just coming over for that. Hang on.
yeah.
I was like, how are they finishing?
Everybody wants to register to vote. It's so like tinny. Nick. But like the volume on it was tinny. Like, my what? The volume on it. You guys have been kind of leaning on the criminals, right? Not really. They've been here.
Everybody's been on.
Okay. The that was the one. Okay. It was like 2 seconds. That's fine. Just if they're like 5 to 10 seconds over, then like be like, all right.
Yeah, but
Feel free to cut them off. I mean, I think they'll be good.
That's helpful.
This?
Yeah.
They've been listening there a lot? You guys saw that?
Yeah.
Alrighty. You guys need anything? Another water, John?
No.
Good. Good. You keep this out just in case. I saw your text. Yeah. I want to be like right here. And the questions with the script I gave you today match up with Dr. Ramirez, right? For the rest?
No.
No, just those got to get matched up too for the second round. I'm not asking.
Okay, funding on our bridges,
Alright, next one should be with that.
and then I have the competitive district.
Yep, and then abolition.
Committee. Okay, 7.5. Yeah, I got that. I got that one. And some charter schools.
Cases in general assembly. That means you're the subject.
Okay, hold on a sec, I gotta turn this on. All right, we're ready to resume. We're gonna begin our second round. Let me remind everybody, the second round features 8 questions pre-screened by the same committee, contributed by audience members via an anonymous Twitter poll. We'll alternate again between the candidates, beginning with Ms. Grace. There'll be 2 minutes for each candidate to respond to each question, and I'm starting with the first question directed towards Ms. Grace. What do you think is the best way to fund Ohio State's roads, highways, and bridges?
Some question I've been asked before. In terms of the best way, I absolutely believe that we need to be directing more funding to our local governments. And many local governments are the ones that bear the responsibility for maintaining county roads, township roads. And those are some of the ones in the greatest need of repair. Currently, Ohio has a huge, an absolutely huge rainy day fund. However, many of our local governments are suffering due to drastic cuts in their local government funding taxpayer dollars were sent to Columbus. They need to come back to our communities so that they can maintain the infrastructure and provide the safety that we need, whether it's roads, bridges, or sewer systems. All those things, they're taken care of by our local governments. They need to have the funding to be able to do that without requiring that they pass local levies and increasing the tax burden on the local community.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, 2 minutes for your response to infrastructure.
Yeah, well, as far as roads and bridges, the main source of funding that comes from those is the gas tax here in Ohio. There's been a lot of talk about the gas tax potentially raising, which I'm not a fan of. However, if it does happen, just like it happened a few years ago, we need to make sure that we're getting our fair share. We need to make sure that this tax and this tax increase isn't being distributed amongst areas of, based on population, based on any other factors, rather than being distributed evenly. Because we need to have our fair share, and it's something that I've studied the gas tax quite a bit. It's something that I think we need a loud voice on in Columbus for the potential opportunity of that raising and making sure that we are not getting cut out of that tax increase, and making sure that it's coming to our local governments, our county engineering offices, different things for infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay. The next question begins with you, Mr. Edwards. The Athens State House District is very competitive. In four of the last five elections going back to 2006, The winning candidate received 52% or less. What about you and your campaign has broad bipartisan appeal? Are there any positions you take that may be typically more aligned with the other political party?
I think I have many views that are looked upon as pretty center of the road, some very liberal, some very conservative, whichever way you look at it. Again, I know I've said it 100 times tonight, and I just got on Twitter during that break and saw that everyone was tweeting at me about me saying bipartisan. But it's something that I think it's very crucial that we say and that we get across at the state level. I have been endorsed from a union organization, which tends to be more of a Democratic thing these days. I've been endorsed by the Farm Bureau. I've been endorsed by a prominent Democrat that was a 4-time county commissioner here in Athens, and Bill Tyson, here in Athens County from Nelsonville, Bill Tyson. Again, I know I've said this and I'm repeating myself. I've never looked at something from a partisanship standpoint. It comes from right and wrong as opposed to right and left. Something else that I think that I've talked about too is the Appalachian Caucus. We have to get that back formed. We have to get that back strong. We have to get together and fight as a group of people fighting for similar issues in southeastern Ohio, rather than trying to take on Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, the money and the people individually.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Grice?
I think my experience, I have a broad range of experience that makes me well suited to this position. Not only have I worked for a legislature, where I experienced firsthand the research and communication and customer service and constituent services that are necessary for members to effectively serve their districts, but I've also started and managed my own business. I've worked for construction businesses. I've worked for restaurant businesses, and having that experience, being a parent, being a volunteer, being an involved community member, it's all important in understanding what the rest of the community is going through, what they're experiencing. So experience, and then also the way I treat people. I think that my family and I have really made it a high priority to treat everyone fairly and with respect, and whether they are Democrat or Republican, and to value everyone, no matter what their income level or what their social or economic status is. And I think that that's something that is very valued and needed in a public servant, someone who is willing to talk to people where they are and understand what their needs are and what is important to them. Being able to reach out and communicate with members of the entire district.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, our third question. What do you believe, and this goes to Ms. Grace first, what do you believe to be the best way to make the voices of Appalachian Ohioans heard at the State House?
I try to speak very calmly, and I rely heavily on research. And when I can go and speak with members of the House, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and speak with members of the Senate, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, and say, look, here are the numbers, this is the situation, this is what the research shows, and this is what we need to do. I firmly believe that that will be far more effective than grandstanding or trying to argue. So just communication and research, evidence that shows what the needs are and what other communities have done to solve similar problems.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, how do you believe our Appalachian voices can best be projected?
I think that we have to have a broad view of things. You know, in order to get something done in Columbus, it comes down to numbers. There's 99 state representatives. You have to get 50 votes to get something done in Columbus. Whenever we're fighting for things that are particular to this area, we got to look around the state and find, you know, if we're bringing up drug abuse, You can look in urban areas. They're suffering from drug abuse, at very high levels of drug abuse, just like southeastern Ohio. We can work with these state reps. We can talk to people within those areas. We can find out what's working, what's not working. This is just one example. Again, you have to look around the state on specific issues to our area and find other people that are suffering from the same thing and come up with solutions that can get the right number of votes that can make a difference to this area.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, question number 4, this will start with you, Mr. Edwards. If elected, which committee would you like to be assigned to?
Well, I've already assigned myself to one now. I did talk about the Finance and Appropriations Committee with the Subcommittee on Higher Education. It's something that I'm passionate about. I'd like to be a part of. Agriculture being another. Energy and Natural Resources being another. But again, whatever committee I am put on, I can promise that I will fight fairly and as strong as I can and as smart as I can for this area and listen to all constituents and make sure that we're fighting for the betterment of southeastern Ohio.
Okay, and Ms. Grace, what committee preferences do you have?
I would love to serve on the Education Committee. Education is my first passion. The thing that I believe is what is most needed to strengthen southeastern Ohio and to help bring people out of the cycle of poverty. I believe education is the tool. And so I would love to serve on the Education Committee. I actually am from a family with multiple generations of farmers, dairy farmers and corn and soybean farmers. And so agriculture is something that is very near and dear to my heart as well. So I would be pleased to serve on the Agriculture Committee also. And I believe that's very important for the residents of this district. But honestly, I'm a bloom where I'm planted. I will learn and work and do absolutely the best that I can do in whatever committee I'm assigned to.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next question will begin with Ms. Grace. What is your stance on Ohio's severance tax on resource extraction, and is raising the severance tax the best way to protect impacted communities in the long term?
I believe that we absolutely need to seriously consider raising the severance tax. Ohio's severance tax is very low compared to other states in the nation. And not only does it need to be raised, but the distribution and allocation of the funds collected from the severance tax need to be reconfigured. We need to take money that is taxed, the severance tax on extraction, and it needs to be sent to communities that are impacted not only by extraction, but also by injection. We have two activities that are happening in tandem. When we have extraction, there is injection, and none of those resources from the severance tax are helping the communities that are impacted by injection. So I believe we need to increase the severance tax and reconfigure. Governor Kasich supported increasing the severance tax. However, he wanted to use that to offset an income tax reduction, and I do not believe that that is in the best interest of Ohio's long-term economy. The severance tax is too dependent on the world global market for oil and gas, and we don't want to base the state's economic calculations on a very shifting number. And so I think that we need to have a targeted to communities to help cover the cost of the extraction and injection, specifically roads and damage, water and air quality testing are some of the things that could be paid for out of an increased severance tax.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, what are your thoughts on the severance tax?
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of raising the severance tax. Severance tax, just the money produced from the severance tax just goes to pay for the regulations on the industry. That's all it's going to right now. In 2015, it produced $21.3 million. However, I do agree with Ms. Grace on if the severance tax is increased, just like the gas tax, we need to make sure that it's coming back to our local communities and that the money, we fight to get the money here as opposed to going elsewhere. The reason that I'm not a fan of raising the severance tax is I think that the natural gas industry needs to be regulated and needs to be safe, but it is the biggest selling point for bringing good paying jobs to this area. And I do not want to pinpoint an industry and punish them more on top of the regulations that they currently have, which they need, because I want to utilize them as the biggest selling point and the biggest marketability to bring industry and jobs to invest here in Southeastern Ohio.
Okay, thank you very much. Question number 6, do you suggest, and this will start with Mr. Edwards, do you suggest that Ohio move away from the property tax-based model of school funding? Why or why not?
So school funding is a very complex issue. I've spent a lot of time with Matt Bunning at Athens City School, treasurer of Athens City Schools, studying school funding. And I'm a math guy, so I love numbers and formulas. But let me just tell you, it is very, very, very confusing. And the one thing that tends to get missed is we talk about a property tax model, we talk about not going the property tax route. What might be good for Athens City Schools might crumble Nelsonville City Schools. What might be good for Nelsonville City Schools might crumble Marietta City Schools. So it is a very complex formula, and I do not want to say today that I want to do away with the property tax model because it is a very complex issue, but I am open to looking at other models across the state that would work for our region and for other areas. Again, we have areas in urban areas that have school funding issues. I think we can work with these state representatives to get something done, find what worked for them and us, and fight together to get something done.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Grace?
We absolutely need to move away from a funding structure that relies on property taxes. Ohio's Supreme Court has ruled not once, but 4 times that our school funding structure is too reliant on property taxes, and that creates an unfair system for our students. We need to change the system. Ohio ranks in the bottom 10 in the nation for disparity in per pupil funding between the poorest and the wealthiest school districts, and we also rank in the bottom 10 in the nation in the achievement gap. We are not serving our poor communities. We need to change the structure, and that's one of my primary motivations for running.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, question number 7 returns us to the charter school issue. And it will go first to you, Ms. Grace. What are your thoughts on the passage of House Bill 2, written into law by Governor Kasich and the Ohio General Assembly last year?
House Bill 2 was a good start. It improves the current situation around charter school accountability, and it means that we are giving some attention to this issue, but it does not go far enough. Like I mentioned earlier, there were numerous efforts to exempt online charter schools, and they are not required to meet the same accountability standards as the brick and mortar charter schools. And we are still, even with the passage of House Bill 2, not anywhere close to having the same level of accountability under ethics, funding, tuition, attendance and record keeping, and achievement as our brick and mortar public schools. And so there's hope because it has been signed into law, and it's a start, and it's not enough.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Edwards on House Bill 2.
I think House Bill 2 is a good start. As Ms. Grace said, our charter schools need to be held to the same standard as our public schools, no doubt about it. What we're seeing with ECOT right now in the news is disturbing. The fact that they're fudging their attendance records is something that is not okay. And again, we need to fight that. We need to make sure it's done fairly. And the charter schools are affecting the schools right here in the district from a funding standpoint. They are, when the way the funding model works in a very simplified way, money comes to a school and then is distributed to the charter school based on how many kids went to that charter school. When it comes into a school, it is multiplied by a percentage. It's called the state share index, and it's based on property values and median household income. However, when it leaves, it is not multiplied by a percentage. So if you take $1 and multiply it by 50% coming into you, but then when it goes out, the full dollar is going out, you're losing money. It's the same amount of money isn't going to the charter school that was going to the public school to start with. So it's definitely something that's very complex, but something that needs looked at. and we need fair funding for our public schools.
Okay, thank you very much. This is our last question in this second half, and it goes to the issue of energy. And it will be directed to you first, Mr. Edwards. Energy is essential to the success of our district, our state, and our country. What are your stances on the current energy sources we use and ideas for investing in other types of energy?
I've talked a lot tonight about natural gas and my stances on natural gas. Something that I will repeat, because I think it's worth repeating, is when it comes to energy, we have to keep in mind that the cheapest and cleanest form of energy we have is energy that we do not use. When you look at renewable energies, it's something that, you know, I'm a fan of the all of the above strategy. We have more solar panel companies here in Athens than any county in the state of Ohio. We need to work with our utilities to incentivize for more renewable energies, more renewable energy options. If you look at AEP, First Energy, they're actually working out with environmental advocacy groups, trying to find a way to add more renewables into their fuel mix. The reasoning for this is it's becoming cheaper for them. It's also more of a demand from the consumer. Consumers want renewable energies more. But I do think that we can incentivize utilities. We can remove regulatory barriers for renewable infrastructure. We can see to it that the electric companies add renewables into their fuel mix. We can incentivize, which is a major problem, and assist in battery storage for energy, renewable energies, which is a major problem. Again, I think that renewables, I'm a fan of all of the above strategy. We need to take advantage of all of the energy that we can, and it's something that can produce a lot of jobs here locally.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Grace?
I think Ohio needs to allow the renewable energy standards to go back into effect. This was a huge driver for development of businesses related to renewable energy sources. When large energy providers such as AEP are told they need to provide a certain percentage of their energy from renewables, then they are incentivized and the businesses know that there will be a market for their products. We do have a wonderful number of solar companies in Athens County. After the renewable energy standards were frozen, they had to take their business, they had more of their business out of state than in state because there was no longer a market for their products. And it caused a great deal of loss to jobs and economic growth for those small businesses. So I firmly believe that Ohio's business economy will do much better if we reinstate the renewable energy standard. And Ms. Edwards has talked a lot about the energy that we don't use. And another aspect of having this renewable energy standards in place is that the energy companies were incentivized to assist in weatherization. They provided a great deal to different organizations to help people weatherize their homes. AEP and Columbia Gas have both been involved in a lot of wonderful programs organized by COAG to go into small communities and help weatherize homes to increase their energy efficiency. And that decreases the need for energy, improves the situation for the families living in that home, and improves the overall environment.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we've reached the end of our program in terms of questions, and we're moving now to our closing statements. And Ms. Grace will begin with your closing statement.
Thank you for being here. Public speaking is not my favorite thing in the world, but communicating with voters, talking about where I stand on issues, and just having the opportunity to take a stand on issues so people have the opportunity to really make informed choices when they go to vote is one of my favorite things to do. I'm just more accustomed to doing it in small groups without a microphone. So thank you for coming, and I'm passionate about working for this community. I think that the strength of Southeast Ohio is multifaceted. There's strength in the people who live here. I met a mom in Meigs County who works 2 jobs. She has 2 children, because her school district no longer offers art, she goes to her son's classes and teaches art at school. She said, I can't draw a stick figure, but I learned online, I watched videos so that I could go in and teach art because these kids need art. We have wonderful, dedicated, hardworking people who are resourceful, and I believe it's part of the job of the state to give them the tools that they need to be successful in those areas, education and job development and growth. We can absolutely expand on use of the beautiful natural resources that are here without focusing on extraction. We have a beautiful river, we have hills for hiking and mountain biking and rock climbing. I think those and the strength of this community are the greatest assets here, and I want to focus on encouraging and helping us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, your closing statement.
Yes, I too would like to thank the Student Senate, Dr. Veneer, College Republicans, College Democrats for having us here tonight. It's very important for us to talk to you and for you to know the issues and how we feel and how we differ. And we agree upon a lot of things, especially on the issues here in Southeastern Ohio. One thing that troubles me when I look around, and I've gone out and traveled the district, I've gone to township trustee meetings, I've gone to organizational meetings. I walk into these meetings and they cannot tell you who their state representative is. This is troubling to me. This is not on the citizens and the people involved with this organization. It is on our current state representative. How are you supposed to represent this area without having a relationship with the people of this area? We were one of the few districts, other than outside of higher education, again, one of the poorest districts in the state. We were one of the few districts to receive $0 in this past year's capital bill. That is sad and something that needs to change. People are angry, people are upset. Just as we elected Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in our primary, we have to get back to working for the people and representing all of this area in Southeastern Ohio. So I would love to get your vote on November the 8th, and thanks for having me.
Okay, before everyone leaves, on behalf of myself and the Ohio University Student Senate, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and I want to thank our two candidates for coming out and agreeing to sit and answer so many questions. And I want to remind everyone that this is about voter registration, and forms are available near the exits. And please note the deadline to register in Ohio is October 11th. This concludes our evening's event, and have a good rest of your evening. Well, we made it.
Yeah.
It was really good.
2 hours of this, though.